Yo, it's the day before Christmas. I get a knock at the door. I look through the peephole and it's two white guys standing outside. And I'm like, who is it? And they like, yo, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and they flashed their badge. I open the door, they got suits on, and they booted, and they got some paperwork in their hand, and they like, yo, are you Nasser El Arabi? I said, yeah, that's me. They're like, yeah, so we went to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, we gotta ask you a few questions. I'm like, yo, come in. So they come into my apartment. I don't know what to think at this point. I don't even think I asked them to take their shoes off. Normally I ask everybody to take their shoes off in my spot. And you know, we sat down, I said, hey, take a seat and I'm gonna sit over here. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking like, yo, what the hell could this be? And why is the FBI sitting in my living room? How'd I get involved in something? They sat me down and they said, hey, do you know Pam? Pam. I'm not sure if I know Pam. Can you remind me? Pam that you purchased 123 Main Street from. Yeah, I know who you talking about. They was like, oh, okay, well, how did you meet Pam? I said, it was her niece at this call center I was working with. And they said, oh, you talking about Susan. Now, guys, I'm changing the names to protect the guilty, all right? And besides, I don't want no cease and desist letters, etc. I say, yeah, that's her name that I was working with. Like, yeah, I literally forgot the person's name I was working with. So I'm like, yeah, I knew this person from work. And I was like, yo, you know, I want to get, my dream is to get into real estate. That's my goal. And she said, oh, word, my aunt do real estate. Let me plug you in with my aunt. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I was like, yeah, so I got with the aunt and I end up buying a house from the aunt. So he asked me, he said, yo, were you promised something at closing? I said, was I promised something? No, I wasn't promised anything. Okay. He said, take a look at this. Have you ever worked for this company? I looked at it, right? Now, guys, do you know when you fill out a credit card application, the mortgage application, it always says in fine print that this is subject to X amount, thousands in fines, and punishable up to X amount of months or years in jail. All right, and then you sign your name, okay? Agreeing to that, all right? So he asked me about this company. I said, nah, I didn't work. I said, I never worked here. It was a record label. And I'm like, nah, I never worked there. And then he gave me a bank application of me applying for a mortgage. He said, what about this? He said, look, right here. It's your information that's saying you worked at this company. I said, oh, nah, I ain't working at that company. That ain't me. He said, oh, okay, yeah, we see you didn't sign the application. I could have faced jail time, right? If I would have signed that application stating that I worked at this company and I didn't, and I never worked there because it would have been looked at I was trying to defraud the bank. But I did not fill out that application. I did not sign that application, thank God. Then the agent asked me, say, yo, as far as this person, what has your interaction been? And I told him straight up, like, yo, this person is a pile of dog waste. I said, yo, they're just a terrible person. I don't like them. They're not good to do business with. I wouldn't do any more business with them, you know? And it was like, oh, okay. They asked me, do you remember the company you used to work at? Now, I literally forgot not only the niece name, Susie, I also forgot the company, but they knew everything. They knew all the jobs I ever had. They knew everybody surrounding this person and how they would get with me, right? They knew everything, right? So it's like they knew the answers that I forgot. I'm like, this is just a small chapter of my life. You know, I worked at that job 3 months. You know what I mean? I dealt with, this person maybe a few months, maybe a year or two, but this chapter of my life that's behind me, I forgot about all this stuff. And they know names, they know who was the loan officer, who was doing this, who was doing that. And I'm telling him like, yeah, how'd you know? You know what I'm saying? Because I forgot. So, he asked me, he said, all right, do you know anything else about this particular person? And they said the name once again. And I'm like, nah. And at this point, he was like, yo, well, what we gonna do, we're gonna take this information. This is my card. If we need you, we'll call you back. If we need you to come to court, testify, whatever. And I'm like, yo, am I in any trouble? They said, nah. I said, so what's this all this about? And it was like, we can't tell you what's this about. The reason being, we can't have you looking at this person in a biased way. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, cool. So that was the interaction. Now, mind you, I was literally about to leave and go out of town for the weekend. Like bags packed, everything. I'm about to hit the road to leave, right? And they just came right before I left. And once they left, right, locked the door, took the card, I go and Google the person's name. So if you're looking at the screen next to me, all you have to do is Google Waxhaw house fraud. As you see, this was a big thing. Y'all can go look through all the articles and see. Well, what happened in my case, I bought a house from somebody. So being that I bought a house with somebody, the FBI did tell me that, yo, we got to investigate every transaction that they ever done. Okay? So every transaction to make sure it was above board. But apparently what was going on was they were going out, the person I was dealing with was going out saying, hey, listen, if you buy a house, we'll give you $10,000, $12,000 back at closing. Or 15,000, whatever the number was. At closing, we'll give that to you, but you got to buy the house. So the person I was dealing with was a promoter of this scam. Now, I wasn't, involved in that. I didn't know anything about that. I just simply bought a house from this person. But they got sentenced as a promoter in this scam. When I Googled it, we were probably in the year 2013 at the time, right? Like 2013. I want to say I was working full time, or 2012 or 2013. I know I didn't have a job at the time. And I got fired in September of 2012. I'll never forget that. But during this time, right, I'm looking at it and I go Google it and I see that this is something that happened in 2007. So now I'm like, wait, this happened like 2007, 2006. They locked up all these people. They locked up attorneys. They locked up the notary. They locked up the loan officers, the appraisers. Everybody's getting time, right? They just locking up everybody. And I'm like, wait, it's 5-6 years later and they just not getting this person? That's crazy. You know what I mean? So my advice, don't commit crime. So, they investigating all this person's transactions, so that's how I got caught up in it. I had made some calls after this, like, yo, you ain't gonna believe what happened, la la la. And somebody told me, like, man, I used to work for an attorney. And when the FBI is doing an investigation on somebody that lives on, let's say, Main Street, he was like, bruh, they pull the reports and have the credit scores and everybody who lives on that street, okay? They know everything about it. They know who filed taxes, who didn't file taxes. They know all that information. She was like, yeah, their reports and everything is very thorough. So she was like, yeah, it's not surprising me that they're investigating this person's every transaction to see if, something fishy went on. Because this person was promising people to give them money at closing. So what they would do is, if the house was worth $150,000, they would tell the bank, yo, this person's buying this for $150,000, but the person was really buying it for $100,000. They get the extra $50,000 and then they just dispersed it. right, amongst each other. They dispersed it amongst each other, and that's how they would do it. That's the fraud they was running with. I wasn't involved with that, thank God. You know, that was illegal. I do remember me being back in Jersey, and that was a big thing in the hood that people would do. Fortunately, I never done it. The feds, they can come get you when they want you. So keep that in mind. But that's just one of my wildest stories of me being in this real estate business, man. You just never know what could happen, bro. Like, it's crazy. But what I want y'all to do, I want y'all to watch the first version of this video when I first started talking about what is karma real, because the person I bought the house from, they was like a real piece of dog pile. Like, you know, they would say, oh yeah, I'm gonna fix this, don't worry about this, I'm gonna fix that, and of course never came back to fix certain things. So, but you know, I was earlier in my career. You live and you learn. Also, comment below, like, what's the craziest thing ever happened to you in real estate? Hey, I'm Nasser, aka the real estate guru. I'm not a guru, I'm a doer, because I actually do this business. Peace.